Hello, my name is Ben. Welcome to Vancouver Carpenter. This is something that I think a lot of people are going to struggle with if you're really new, is you're trying to screw the piece of wood in and it never winds up quite where you want it. And there's some basic tricks that us carpenters use to help make that happen. So the first thing that's going to really help you out is that you've got accurate cuts on your framing. So you want your framing to be a little bit snug, so you have to gently tap it into place, but you don't want it to be so much that it pushes things out of square or out of level, but just that it sort of gently sits there in place where you're putting it. So for putting your regular framing together, we're just using an impact driver, which is really useful. And the reason an impact driver helps so much over a traditional drill, as it impacts, it forces the drill bit into the tip of the screw, and that stops it from wanting to slip out as easily. So positioning is key here. So how I like to start is I'll start by putting a toe screw in here, and I'm actually gonna have the lumber a little bit out. Now, not a 1/4 inch or 3/8 like I'm exaggerating, but just about a big 1/16 to an 1/8. Okay, so when starting your screw, now I want this basically on a 45-degree angle into the wood, but that's kind of hard to start it. So when starting, I'm starting about 3/4 of an inch down from this line here, and I'm gonna angle my drill like this, so closer to parallel with this top plate. I'm just gonna wait till it bites like that, and then I'm gonna tilt it back to 45 degrees. And so the reason we start back is as it starts ratcheting in, it's gonna pull it forward, right flush to where I want it to wind up. So of course I neglected to do something because I don't usually put a square line here because I can just see it square with experience, but you should have a line so that you can see if it's square, like I've put on this one. So that's square, I'm gonna quickly mark it. And now we're just gonna come in from the side and do the same thing. I'm gonna push the stud this way a bit, overcompensate by about 1/8 of an inch. And then let it go back. There it is. Now I'm gonna put one more back here. And because there was already 2 screws in place, I didn't need to overcompensate because I already can't move it. And just in case it's not exactly where you wanted it, it is possible to fine tune it by a 1/16 or so like this. But for what you're doing, maybe it doesn't need to be that perfect anyways. So next, level your stud down if you don't have a mark on the floor yet. Now this is the first one I'm putting in, so I don't have a level mark. So that's good. Mark it out. So it's basically a wash, rinse, repeat of the same thing. I've got my line here. I'm gonna tap this over. So it's about 1/8 of an inch over. Start with my drill 1 inch up and not on the angle I want. Now that it's bit, correct it. And it's still just a hair proud, so I can give it a little tap. One in the back side over here. Oh, and it pushed it way off my line, so I'm gonna back it off a bit. There we go. Okay, so I've got my stud in and it's totally plumb, and now I want this next one to wind up totally plumb. So I can now just measure, and I have 19 5/16. So I'm gonna measure down here. (19 5/16). And before I screw it in, it never hurts to check. And there must be a bow in the stud, so it's not level where I need it to be level yet. So I'm going to tap it over a little more. You'll see why this is important in this case in a bit. Okay, that is good. So the reason I'm fussing so much here is normally I wouldn't fuss so much just over a stud, but there's actually going to be a little opening here for shelves, so these have to be totally perfect independently of the rest of the wall. So because this is an opening for shelves, the next thing I need to do is cut something that fits between here and here. And this has to be perfect, so I can't use friction to my advantage. It has to be so perfectly cut that it won't stay perfectly put. So right here, 17 3/4, and that's exactly what it has to be. So now, as you can see, I've got my perfectly cut piece of wood, because if I cut it with a little bit of friction, it's going to push these out. And I'm going to bow out my opening. It's not going to be the width I want, and it's not going to be plumb. So now I've got this thing, and it's not staying still, and how am I going to screw that in easily? Especially once the ratcheting starts shaking it down. So here's how we do this. So I'm going to start a screw on this side, and it's going to poke out about 1/16 of an inch. I'm going to start a screw on this side, and it's going to poke out 1/16 of an inch. So now I've got these handy dandy little nubs from the screws that are acting as little claws to kind of hold the wood where I want it. And I'm going to get this perfectly in place. And in this case, I put it flush, and it stayed flush because I am screwing from the back this time. It's nice and square right where I want it. And I'm going to add one more here. Check your work. It's good. All right. Next, go and pick the strangest corner of the job site to close your video out, because after all, this is a job site, not a film set. So, thanks for watching Vancouver Carpenter. I hope you got some helpful tips out of that. They're going to help you get your framing nice and square and level. It's just a couple of basic things I do. So thanks for watching. See you in the next video.